with another wrestling review. This time it's AEW Rampage from July 15th, 2022. This is Fighter Fest Week 1, day two of a four-day event for 2-week event here for Fighter Fest. It was recorded on July 13th, right after Dynamite in Savannah, Georgia. So after an amazing, maybe top 10 episode of Dynamite ever, the people in these 4 matches tonight on Rampage had to follow that. They had to follow that Swerve and Our Glory winning the tag titles after a really good episode before that. So they'll all have an uphill battle tonight to get the crowd loud. Let's see if everyone's able to step up their games and get the crowd going. And I did give credit to this crowd. The Savannah, Georgia crowd wasn't very many of them, but the people that were in the building were loud themselves. It didn't quite come across on TV as super loud because there wasn't many of them, but everybody that was there was super loud, and they were able to maintain their energy throughout this entire episode of Rampage, which is a testament to how good this crowd is, because most crowds would have been out of gas by the time this Rampage started right after Dynamite. So um I went over to YouTube because of course you have to go to YouTube to find the first entrances. Whoever's in the first match, you get their entrance on the YouTube page for AEW. And then I noticed that, oh wow, there's an FTR and Briscoe sit down interview with Caprice Coleman as the moderator that happened earlier today. So I watched that before I watched Rampage, and I'll tell you what happened in that. So FTR is sitting on one side. They're holding on to their IWGP and AAA tag titles. The ROH tag titles are on a pedestal in the middle. Behind the pedestal is Caprice Coleman, and the Briscoes are on the other side. Too bad that the Briscoes just 3 weeks ago had to drop their Impact tag titles. Otherwise, there would be 4 tag titles in this picture. But now we know why Briscoes dropped the Impact tag titles to the Good Brothers. It was because Tony Khan decided to sign them for ROH. Now, we haven't seen an official signing for the Briscoes, but there's no way that Tony Khan would if he was adamant about not having the Briscoes. And sure, they never made an appearance on TV. That's probably why we're getting this sit down on YouTube. So maybe the Briscoes, this is going to be their only appearance with AEW / the new ROH, but we're not quite sure yet. Anyway, Coleman tells us that they will be fighting for the ROH titles. It's this next Saturday. So in 8 days when Rampage happened, I'm recording on Saturday already. So a week from now will be ROH Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view. FTR gets the chance to talk first since they're the champions. So Dax says, before we get started, I want to break bread with you guys. We brought a little gift. So Dax pulls out an expensive looking bottle of alcohol. I'm not quite sure what it was. I thought maybe sake, but towards the end, Dax tells us it was tequila, which makes my spine shiver. I don't like tequila. But anyway, Briscoes say, oh, that bottle looks fancy as crap. And then they all 4 have a toast with a shot. And Coleman says, well, the last match between FTR and Briscoes was one of the best tag matches I've ever seen. Dax says, yes, that was one of our favorite matches for sure. Cash says it was a career night, something I'll never forget. Mark Briscoe then says, Caprice, that was a piss poor evening. I hated it. Jay says it was all right. Mark says, I went back and watched it, but I had to cut it off before the end. We're fighters. So are you. In a fight, it takes one good shot. Y'all caught me. So Jay says, let me break it down. ROH shut down in the end of 2021, so we just wanted to let everyone know the Briscoes didn't shut down with them. We were wrestling 3 or 4 times a week. Meanwhile, FTR was wrestling about once every 3 weeks on Dynamite. It's not an excuse, but maybe y'all were fresher than us. So Cash says, well, that sounds like an excuse to me. And Dax says, I told you I respect you, but before the pay-per-view, please don't make me lose that respect. That pisses off the Briscoes even more. So Mark says he doesn't like it that he has to have a civil conversation right now when all I want to do is beat you down because you had the luckiest night in your life. And Cash says, well, how about we beat you twice in one night then? Best 2 out of 3 falls for the ROH title. Dax says, I get what you're saying. Lucky shot. It happens. You might be calling us Buster Douglas, but we are Muhammad Ali, the greatest of all time. If I got to beat your butt at Death Before Dishonor, I will. Then it all breaks down. The 4 men get out of their chairs. They're getting in each other's faces. Dax breaks out the expensive bottle again and says, let's make it official. Then pours 4 more shots, and this is where he says it's tequila. Coleman then says it will be official. 2 out of 3 falls. Let's toast to that. But instead of toasting the shots, the Briscoes pour them out on the ground. Coleman has to prevent them from starting a big brawl, and then the segment ends. So great segment here. You can go find this on the AEW YouTube page. And yes, maybe this does tell us that the Briscoes won't be sticking around. It looks like Tony Khan's willing to have them on the ROH pay-per-view, but doesn't want the Briscoes on television whatsoever. And if you remember the reports where it might not have been Tony Khan that was against bringing the Briscoes in, it was a direct order from um, Turner Sports and Universal Discovery. So it looks like Tony Khan found a way around that by never putting Briscoes on television, but still having them at ROH. And that kind of tells us, unless ROH is going to start as a streaming service on something that isn't owned by HBO Max, like that's owned by the same company that already said we don't want the Briscoes on our television channels. So this might be the only time we get to see the Briscoes in an AEW capacity. It all depends on what ROH does going forward. But let's get into Rampage now. I figured I'd add that in there. Seemingly, it would have been on Rampage, but like I said, the Briscoes aren't allowed on TNT or TBS. So we're going to start with it's going to be the tag match between the Dark Order's Alex Reynolds and John Silver versus the House of Black's Brody King and Malakai Black. And this match was weirdly set up, in my opinion. So Hangman Page was being interviewed on Dynamite, saying that he was disappointed to lose in the Royal Rumble. Then Reynolds and Silver interrupted their friend Hangman, which was kind of rude, in my opinion, especially someone who has anxiety that we know Hangman does. Hangman probably didn't appreciate getting interrupted by his friends there. But anyway, Reynolds and Silver said they would take on the House of Black for Hangman, since Brody King was the one to eliminate Hangman from the Royal Rampage. So after a great match for the world title against Moxley, now Brody King has his sights set on Darby Allin. Brody even attacked Darby Allin at a fan signing. We got to see a little bit of that on Dynamite. They showed that happen. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Darby Allin and Sting at some point during this match. Brody King has been in the ring with Alex Reynolds before, back in May on Elevation, and Malakai Black has actually been in the ring with Alex Reynolds before. They met once in 2013 at CZW Combat Zone Wrestling Best of the Best 12 tournament, where Malakai Black won a first round match. It was a three-way match where Shane Hollister was the third man and Alex Reynolds was there too. So Malakai Black won that when it was called Tommy End. Also, just a quick note, in that 2013 CZW Best of the Best tournament was Jonathan Gresham, Biff Busick, Caleb Conley, Rich Swann, Swerve, A.R. Scott, who trained Swerve, Andrew Everett, and Apollo Crews. So who's who of names here. But the winner was Alex Colon, who I'm told is an indie legend, but I don't know much about him. I think he's mostly a deathmatch guy per se. But wow, so many names that we will go on to know very well back in 2013 here at CZW. Also on that event was an Adam Cole versus Sami Callihan match. So seems like something that if you want to go back and watch some wrestling from 9 years ago, for people that would become pretty famous, definitely go check out that event. So over on YouTube, I get to see the entrances for this match, and the House of Black are making their entrances first, and they have Julia Hart with them, Brody and Malakai do, and they're actually referred to as representing the House of Black, the tag team of the Kings of the Black Throne. So we're bringing back the Kings of the Black Throne name here, and I think it was different music when they came out. I think they came out to special Kings of the Black Throne music, which has chanting monks in the beginning of it. It sounds almost exactly like the Halo theme. So props for that. I like that song a lot. I think it's a special song only for the Kings of the Black Throne version, which is the tag team of Malakai Black and Brody King. Loving that. Love everything about that. Their entrance was great as usual. Julia Hart looks great with them. And of course that went from Halo chanting to like heavy metal with like bells tolling in the background. So Jericho's on commentary alongside JR and Excalibur for all of Rampage tonight. Jericho had a pretty good night on commentary. JR says Julia Hart will be a big star in this business. I can agree that Julia Hart has a lot of potential, but even in this very moment, it's not like Julia Hart, she's only 20 years old, but she's not even four times better than Julia Hart at the age of 20 is Roxanne Perez, aka Roxy. So it's not like Julia Hart's this amazing product that's only 20 years old. So it kind of came off creepy, as if JR just thinks Julia Hart's going to be a big star because she thinks that she's hot. and JR's like 4 times her age. So anyway, that was a little creepy, but Malakai comes into this match with an 18-4 record. Brody King with a 10-2 record, and remember, one of those was just last week on Dynamite against John Moxley for the interim world title. So Dark Order out next to Pretty Big Cheers. They are the 4th ranked tag team in AEW, which is pretty interesting. I'll talk about the rankings a little bit later because we have another tag match with some rankings involved. But that does tell me maybe since Malakai Black failed for get the All Atlantic title and Brody King failed to get the world title, that maybe their focus will turn back to the tag titles as the Kings of the Black Throne. So Swerve in Our Glory versus Kings of the Black Throne would be amazing. I would definitely love to see that match if that's what we're setting up eventually. Maybe that's a match for All Out. Yeah, well, think about how both Swerve in Our Glory and Kings of the Black both have one big guy and one smaller guy, so that would be a great match. But anyway, Silver comes in with a record of 54-30, Reynolds with a record of 48-38. So Reynolds and Black will start the match. They start with a collar and elbow and then do a bunch of amateur style wrestling. Black's able to get a headlock and a takedown, but Reynolds shows some good amateur skills to counter this into an armbar. Black thinks he has the upper hand, but Reynolds rolls Black up. But Malakai hits a deep arm drag right after that. So Jericho's also putting over Julia Hart, that they think she's going to be a big star. Brody King then tags in, but misses a massive looking chop. John Silver, the meat man, now tags in. Silver flexes and gets right in Brody's face. Brody's about a foot taller than John Silver, but John Silver is a power lifter. So Brody probably still has the strength advantage, but it's not going to be ridiculously overpowering Silver, who's strong himself. So Brody does a super perfect evil laugh when Silver tries a shoulder tackle that has no effect. But Silver then goes off the ropes with a running forearm. This knocks Brody down to his knees or maybe even on his back. But Brody just gets right up and hits a huge lariat to level Silver. Silver then dodges a running senton and then hits a penalty kick on Brody King and then tags in Reynolds. So then they both double team moves on both of the members of the Kings of the Black Throne and then knock them both out of the ring. So Reynolds dives out onto the ring to Brody, but Brody, of course, catches it and slams Reynolds hard onto the apron. Then hits a running senton back in the ring on Reynolds. It hits this time, and we go to a picture-in-picture ad break. So during that, Brody puts Reynolds in the Kings of the Black Throne corner and tags in Malakai. They start to wear down Reynolds in the corner. Quick tags here. Double team back elbow the Reynolds, who's now definitely in trouble. Brody stays on the attack now. Black back in and applies an arm bar, and we come back from the break. Really good match so far, though. I just lost my spot. Sorry. Can't believe I can't find my spot. Here's where we go to a picture-in-picture ad break. Blah blah blah. Okay, I'm just going to start here. I don't know why I couldn't find my spot. Silver dodges to make Black knock Brody off the apron. Silver then hits a back suplex for a 2 count on Black. Silver tags in Reynolds, and they hit a double team on Black, but Black flips out of this move right onto his feet. Brody then runs in to help them as they take out both men. Brody hits a massive lariat on Reynolds, who somehow kicks out of that. Black then moonsaults to the outside, but Silver's able to dodge it. A lot of moves were dodged by Malakai was missing a lot of moves tonight by them being dodged by the Dark Order guys. So double teams on Brody now, but Brody blocks the next one they try, and Silver hits instead a deadlift German on Brody that looked great with the size differences. Immediately after this, Reynolds rolls over the both of them into a jackknife pin on Brody, but Malakai Black off the top rope, drop kicks 75% way across the ring to break up this pin. What a great looking move, and this is a great match. And I didn't really expect it to be that great, but maybe I should have. So Black counters the spin doctor attempt from Silver with a spin kick, and Brody hits the Dante's Inferno to get the 1-2-3 on Silver. Your winners by pinfall, the Kings of the Black Throne. Great match here, and Silver and Reynolds are definitely underrated. I even underrated them, knowing that I've said before that they're underrated. I was thinking this match wasn't going to be that great, but it was pretty good. So Silver and Reynolds definitely deserve some more storylines and fleshing out of their characters. They've kind of been one-dimensional lackeys of the Dark Order for so long now that they haven't really established other characters, especially Reynolds. At least Silver has the whole Johnny Hungy nickname. He's got the Meat Man nickname, and he's got the whole short guy who's jacked gimmick. But Reynolds, on the other hand, has no gimmick, has no personality, and no character. I mean, you can see him on the BTE, his character that he's like a perverted kind of guy, but we don't ever see that on TV. That's only on BTE, and really, he's never in storylines. So that definitely needs to change. And I had completely forgotten by this point, because it was such a good match, that Darby Allin and Sting were probably going to show up, and here they are. Darby runs out and starts attacking Brody. Meanwhile, Sting is staring down Malakai Black. They stare at each other for a while until Darby and Brody just kind of brawl their way to the back. Malakai and Sting go to leave, but then both turn to see if either one of them is going to try a cheap shot, but they stare down a little bit more and just walk away. So that should be a pretty good tag match when we get there. First, it's going to be on Dynamite. Don't forget Brody King versus Dante. Not Dante. Darby Allin. I don't know if I hope I wasn't saying Dante. I still got the Dante's Inferno finisher on my mind. So we go from that to a pretty good video segment here. It's the Redeemer Miro. And he tells us, my God, did you make a deal with the devil to stop me? Because ever since that mess, I can feel that black mess. That mess. So he's talking about when remember Miro got the black mist spit into his face. So I think he said, ever since that mist, I can feel these claws in my back. Something is closing in on me. Should I let the spirits take me or rip their heads off their spine? So I ask you again, my God, did you send the House of Black to destroy me or recruit me? So pretty interesting here. Miro already realizing Miro has we already have established that Miro is very like spiritual and has a close connection with his own body. His body's a temple and all that stuff. So it's interesting here that Miro, within a couple weeks, maybe how long has it been since Forbidden Door? 3 weeks. Miro can already tell that the mist has done something to him, and now he's asking his God if he should join the House of Black or destroy them. So pretty interesting here. I'm not quite sure where they're going to go. Maybe they'll have him join the House of Black, which would definitely be interesting, or he could just start feuding with them. So like we already got the House of Blacks in the story with Darby and Sting, but I do think Buddy Matthews, is that his name now? Yeah, Buddy Matthews is coming back from injury soon, so Buddy could feud with Miro until the Kings of the Black Throne are done with Sting and Darby, or Miro just joins the House of Black. So interesting storyline here. I love Miro. Great promo. We go to an ad break, and then we come back and we see for next week's Dynamite, Darby versus Brody and Kingston versus Jericho in a barbed wire match. We already know that. Later on, Excalibur runs down the entire card for all 3 shows next week. So they show a little bit, or just a celebration of Swerve and Our Glory celebrating their title win. And then they tell us it's time for another title match as Lee Moriarty comes out. He's got a 7-1 singles record in 2022. So this will be an ROH World Heavyweight title match. They don't put the heavyweight in there. It's just a world title match. Jonathan Gresham alongside Tully Blanchard and Tully Blanchard Enterprises versus Lee Moriarty, who has got Matt Sydal with him. So the story of this match goes back a few weeks, where Lee Moriarty wanted a title shot but wasn't granted one. Then Gresham, who is the champion, teamed with Moriarty to face off against the Gates of Agony, Toa Leoa and Khan, who are part of the Tully Blanchard Enterprises. Anyway, last week on Rampage, Gresham turned, refused to tag in, and joined the Tully Blanchard Enterprises, turning heel and making TBE a legit threat to all of ROH. They've now got the Gates of Agony in the tag division, who look like a monstrous tag team. They've got Brian Cage, who could go for the TV title at any point. Big Brian Cage is a monster, and Tully Blanchard's Enterprises could get all the gold in a short amount of time, now adding the ROH World title just by having Jonathan Gresham join them. So this might be one of the last chances for them to stop the tide of Tully Blanchard Enterprises taking over ROH. big chance here for Lee Moriarty to stop the juggernaut before it gets gaining some steam going downhill potentially. So big chance here for Lee to take the ROH World title from Jonathan Gresham. I wouldn't have put it at 0% chance. They always could have ran it back, a rematch. Lee Moriarty could have won tonight, and they could have ran a rematch. We never had a before this match. We find out after it, but before this match, there was no ROH World title announced for the pay-per-view in 8 days. So these two have had 2 singles matches before, all within the last 2 years. One of them was in PWG, the other in GCW. Both matches went over 20 minutes, and both were won by Jonathan Gresham. So Caprice Coleman comes out on commentary. He's always great at commentary. And Gresham said that, Coleman says that Gresham wouldn't return my phone calls all week. And Gresham is now out. He's got his foundation flag and his octopus mask. Tully Blanchard and the entire Tully Blanchard enterprise come out with them. So Brian Cage and the Gates of Agony. And since this is an ROH match, they're forced to shake hands. Then Lee explodes right as the bell ring with some strikes. Gresham bails the ring. These strikes were to the face. And Coleman tells us that Gresham is used to Gresham is used to pure rules matches, and also Coleman thinks Gresham has a weak chin, meaning that he can't take very many strikes to the face without getting in trouble. So right on cue, then Lee hits a big high knee to the face, and Gresham bails again, this time hurting. So we've established that Gresham is an amazing technical beast, but he has a weak chin. And can't withstand strikes to the face. So that's something to think about going forward. Gresham then goes over to Tully for some help, but Lee just goes out there to attack him. Gresham's thrown into the barricade, and the crowd's definitely behind Lee Moriarty in this one. Gresham eats another strike to the face, but Gresham shakes it off this time and starts to work on the arm of Lee Moriarty. This is the story of this match, where Gresham is going to be working on this arm for a long time. But Lee Moriarty isn't deterred yet. He tries another forearm to the face. Gresham then takes the tape off of his wrist tape, and throws it on the ground. The referee picks it up and goes to throw it out of the ring. While the referee was distracted, Gresham hits Lee right in the yam bags. This gets Matt Sydal livid ringside. Gresham now goes back on the attack on the arm. Lee gets to the ropes, but the arm is definitely damaged by now. Too many attacks have been sustained to it. Gresham is talking to Tully some strategy as they now go back to grappling, where Gresham easily takes control as we go to a picture-in-picture ad break. So during that, Lee counters with a head scissor, the submission hold version, but Gresham gets out of it right away. Lee then goes back to forearms, but Gresham attacks the arm again. Gresham has waist control on Lee, but Lee fights out tough to get out of it. Lee does get out, but European uppercut sends Lee over the ropes to the outside. Sydal's now over there checking on Moriarty, but Gresham just shoves Sydal away. Sydal gets up in the face of Gresham, but this allows Lee Moriarty to go back on the attack. Sydal says something to Lee before Lee gets into the ring, but this allows Gresham to take control again. Sydal kind of costing Lee Moriarty there, where you can keep that in the back of your memory for something that happens later tonight. So keep that in mind, where Sydal kind of cost Lee Moriarty potentially the match. That was a make or break moment to gain control, and he lost it thanks to Matt Sydal. So then we lose the picture ad break for about a minute before we return. When we're back, Lee's arm is very damaged. Lee now hits a big kick to the face to buy a little bit time to recover. The crowd's cheering loudly for Lee Moriarty, rallying behind him. Lee hits a belly to back suplex, nips up, all fired up, but Gresham blocks a brainbuster attempt, but I think it was actually supposed to be a Northern Lights. This one was blocked, and Lee hits a nice drop kick instead. Then Lee does hit the move he wants, which is a Northern Lights suplex with a bridge. The announcers mentioned that Lee Moriarty is his whole Taiga style is a little bit influenced by Tiger Mask, and Tiger Mask is a practitioner of the Northern Lights suplex with a bridge. So I like that the announcers brought that up. But Gresham's just barely able to kick out of this. Both men recover now on the mat for a few seconds. The referee gets all the way up to a 5 count, potentially counting both men out, for a knockout. Anyway, then they counter a bunch of moves in a row to each other until Gresham's able to take down Lee and hit a knee drop to the face of Lee. So Lee tries some pinning attempts now, but they don't work. Gresham catches a knee, catches a kick. Gresham now has the foot, stomps the other foot, and locks in the octopus stretch. Lee Moriarty is forced to tap out since his arm was already badly damaged. Your winner by submission and still ROH World Champion is Jonathan Gresham. Tony Schiavone goes to the ring now to interview Gresham, and Gresham says, "These people don't know about the great sport of pro wrestling. We will all see his face a lot more now because he's the best hold for hold wrestler today." Tully says that was textbook technical wrestling. Cue Claudio Castagnoli's terrible music. But wow, Claudio versus Gresham at Death Before Dishonor next week. It's not official yet, but you have to imagine it will be. And yes, before this episode goes off the air, it's official. Claudio Castagnoli will fight for the ROH World title, potentially in the main event of Death Before Dishonor, unless FTR versus Briscoes, which might get the main event after their first match being so amazing. But Claudio Castagnoli never won the ROH World title, was in ROH for many years, and never got the title. So that's going to be a great story behind that match, even though we have only 1 week to build it. So hopefully we'll find out some more about this match, a little more angle, something storyline to go with it next week. But Claudio Castagnoli versus Jonathan Gresham for the ROH World title sounds amazing. Sign me up for that one. And we go through all the title matches later. Death Before Dishonor looks like a great card. So in the back now, of all people, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, Fallen Angel, Christopher Daniels. He tells us that he knows Samoa Joe and Jay Lethal very well, then makes fun of Lethal for having to talk tough while Joe's not even here, and says Joe will teach Lethal a lesson, but if you keep talking trash with Joe not being here, maybe I'll slap you in the mouth. So that would be great. I've seen Christopher Daniels wrestle recently in New Japan Strong, so Daniels can wrestle, even though if you can notice his eye, even like 18 months after the Young Bucks kicked his eye and made it legitimately turn black for until now, 18 months later, Christopher Daniels' eye is still completely black on one side. It's not a contact. It's not a gimmick. It's real life. The Young Bucks kicked him that hard in the face, unfortunately. And I'm pretty sure they're really good friends in real life, so no hard feelings or anything. But anyway, let's go on to our next match. We were told on Dynamite that Athena and Kris Statlander were going to be watched by Stokely Hathaway and the Baddies, so they'll be watching this, and we didn't know who was going to be against, but it is the Renegade twins, who we've seen a few times on Dynamite. So they've been on there before, and I imagine they were maybe even considered to be baddies. I could have seen the Renegade twins be the baddies. So I'm guessing the story of this match will be Layla Gray doing something to prove herself to Jade and Kira, who don't want Layla Gray to be a baddie, but Stokely brought her in anyway. Either that or the Renegade twins are Jade's choice to be baddies, but that's not it. That's not the story here. So Kris Statlander comes out. She's ranked 3rd in the women's division with a 48-18 record. Athena out next. She's got a 2-0 record, and wow, only 2 matches so far for Athena. That seems pretty wild. I wish we had a women's only show every week. Anyway, in the ring already, of course, are the Renegade twins. They've got a 0-2 tag record, but they've also had singles matches, many singles matches, I think, for Robyn Renegade, maybe over 10 on AEW. So we then see there's a baddie section that Layla Gray's in alongside 3 other women that we've all seen, all 3 of them on Dark before. I know Valentina Rossi was one of them. Unfortunately, I can't remember the names of the other 2, but they were out there in the baddie section tonight with Layla Gray. No sign of Jade Cargill or Kiera Hogan. So Kris and Athena start out with stereo drop kicks before the bell even rings. Then they take out both Renegade twins and they hit a double senton, then a double team assisted knee to the face, and now the bell rings. So already this match is almost over before the bell even rings. Athena hits a high arch suplex on Charlotte Renegade. Athena goes up to the top rope and hits the O-face top rope stunner for the 1-2-3. Super quick match here. Layla Gray now on the apron looking very fine. And Kris from behind Statlander, from behind Layla, throws her into the ring. Athena and Statlander go to double team Layla Gray, but they are stopped by Jade Cargill and Kiera Hogan making the save. Jade just quickly comes in, hits a pump handle suplex on Athena immediately while Kiera does something. I was looking the other way while Kiera took out Kris, and it took Jade and Athena 3 seconds to destroy Athena and Kris Statlander, and then they leave. So yet another super rushed women's segment. AEW desperately needs its own women's show. I don't care if it's going to get bad ratings. At least let us people that enjoy women's wrestling actually have. It's just a tease at this point. The AEW women's division is one big tease. And this is coming from someone who watches every episode of Dark and Dark Elevation, where we do get to see the women wrestle. But it's still every time they're on Dynamite or Rampage, you got to rush. You got 5 seconds to do this, and then we're gonna have a beatdown after the match, but you're not even gonna hit one move. We're gonna have Jade and Kira come out. They're gonna hit you guys in 3 seconds, and then we're gonna be out in 10 seconds and out of here and back to the men. That's how it feels. It feels every time that there's a women's segment. Rush, so we can get back to the men quick, so we don't lose all our ratings and stuff. Screw you, screw ratings. Either have a women's division or don't. Just abolish the women's division and get rid of it if you're going to treat it like this, or give them their own show. Ideally, a 2-hour live weekly show. But if that can't happen, maybe something taped like Rampage and have it be an hour-long women's show. But we're already trying to figure out where to put ROH. Rampage might turn into the ROH show. We don't know what's going to happen. But in the meantime, the women's division is ridiculous. It's always rush. Get through everything. Let's get back to the men now. Of course, the women's division is never going to get respect that way. Everybody's going to look at that and think, if they're not already a women's wrestling fan, they're going to think, oh, yeah, this doesn't mean anything because they're telling me it doesn't mean anything because they're rushing through it. So like I'm saying, either get rid of the women's division or treat it with respect. It shouldn't be this half stuff that WWE's been doing for 20 years. Impact actually gives their women some time. Impact actually gives their Knockouts division storylines. There's about 3 or 4 or 5 storylines going on. They have a tag title and a women's title, but that's only 2 titles for them to go for. Meanwhile, all the other women have storylines going on in Impact. And that's something that WWE and AEW has no clue how to do. So anyway, after the break, we see Lee Moriarty and Matt Sydal. So remember, I told you to keep in the back of your mind that little mix-up where it kind of looked like Sydal cost Lee Moriarty, not quite the match, but potentially cost him the match by distracting him on accident. So Stokely Hathaway walks in, and Stokely says that you've been here about a year now, right, Lee Moriarty? You've wrestled CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, and you should have a lot more respect around here. But you know why you don't? You hang around with this guy, Matt Sydal. You need to ditch Matt Sydal. So Matt Sydal yells in his really non-intimidating voice and says that he got a match versus Dante Martin next week. So Dante comes in and says it's peace, love, and pro wrestling. That line was to remind us that Dante Martin is the other student of Matt Sydal. So we've got Matt Sydal students facing each other next week on Rampage, and Lee Moriarty is for sure going to join up with Stokely Hathaway. That would be a great move. I think Lee Moriarty having Stokely as his mouthpiece would be amazing. It would. I wouldn't put them with the I wouldn't have Lee Moriarty in segments with Jade Cargill. It just would be a good way to show that Stokely Hathaway can manage multiple people. Remember when Jade had Smart Mark Sterling as her manager, Smart Mark would still go off and do stuff with Tony Nese every now and then. So this is going to be great. It kind of telegraphs what's going to happen next week. I'm assuming that'll make Lee Moriarty heel right after he got Jonathan Gresham to turn heel on him, but I think that's fine. Lee Moriarty hasn't had any stories in a while now. His only story is that he's Matt Sydal's student. So this makes sense. To finish this story, he's going to fight student versus student and probably have something to do with joining Stokely Hathaway next week. So that should be interesting. So now in the ring, Tony Schiavone's with the Gun Club, Billy, Austin, and Colton. And Tony says, what's going on between you guys and the Acclaim? So the crowd is chanting a-hole at the Gun Club here. Billy gets on the mic and says, everyone loves the Acclaimed. I love the Acclaimed. I treated them better than I treat my own sons. But there comes a time when Daddy Butt has to drop the hammer. Jericho laughs at Billy for saying that. So then the Acclaimed come down, but they don't rap, and they just charge to the ring. Billy says, hold on. I know how we can settle this. Everyone wants to see it one last time, and then we can go our separate ways. So Billy Gunn tries to do the scissoring, but the Acclaimed just attack the Gun Club and send all 3 of them packing. Now Max Caster gets on the microphone, and with no music in the background, Max Caster has a rap. He says, Billy Gunn, you ain't nothing but an a-hole. How you so big, but you hung like a tadpole? And the Butt Boys, more like Dumb and Dumber, come back and fight us, you broke mother. And then Bowens rips the microphone from Mac's hands and says, wait, no, Billy says from the ramp, you can't say that. And Bowens gets the crowd to have a Butt Boys chant. Of course, I just try not to swear on these in case you want to listen at work and stuff, but it wasn't the word butt for sure. And Austin says, you guys want the match right now? Well, how about no? And then the Gun Club leaves. So that's going to be a match at some point. It should be a pretty good match. But don't forget, at some point before that match happens, we're going to get one of those amazing music videos where the Acclaimed, remember the one about Sting and Darby Allin? So at some point, maybe this week on Dynamite or something, we're going to get an Acclaimed music video talking about the Gun Club, which should be hilarious. And it's going to be awesome. So I can't wait for that. I'm looking forward to that more than the actual match. So Mark Henry now for his weekly collecting his paycheck. He's got Private Party and the Lucha Brothers who will be fighting in the main event. And apparently Private Party are not finished with the AFO, Andrade Family Office, because Andrade and Jose, the assistant, are with Private Party. So Mark asks Andrade, why did you choose Private Party to represent yourself against the Lucha Brothers? So Andrade says he's been busy, so he had Jose set all this up. He had nothing to do with it. Private Party are all offended, and Andrade tells them to shut up. So Isiah says, we tried calling you, texting you. I called your pops. I did see the wedding photos, though. Congrats. But we found out we can't rely on you. We can only rely on our own talent. So definitely trouble in paradise here. And it's a good way to explain why Private Party have been gone for a month or so. Apparently it's because Andrade was not picking up the phone when and didn't call them into action. So it looks like that'll be a fun story. Maybe Private Party will be turning face very soon. And Penta now says, Andrade, how quickly forget the culture of Lucha Libre, talking about how he keeps taking off the mask. And Fenix calls Andrade a piece of trash. So that was pretty interesting about the whole Private Party and AFO stuff. So now is the portion where Excalibur runs down the entire week of events next week. So it's week 2, night 3 and 4 of Fyter Fest. And then on Saturday, the ROH Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view. So first on Dynamite will be Kingston versus Jericho in a barbed wire everywhere match. Christian Cage and Luchasaurus for the first time teaming up versus the Varsity Blondes. And we'll probably get more Christian on the microphone in that one. Brody King versus Darby Allin. Of course, we've been setting that one up even on this show. It's announced that the best friends, Chucky T and Trent, will fight John Moxley and Wheeler Yuta of the Blackpool Combat Club. And then on Rampage next week, of course, the Dante Martin versus Lee Moriarty match we just announced. And then we're told more major announcements will be made for Rampage later this week. And I wouldn't be surprised if Rampage is a complete ROH show next week. So maybe something to do with Serena Deeb or Mercedes Martinez, maybe something to do with Jay Lethal, or maybe the return of Samoa Joe before he returns at Death Before Dishonor. So I'm expecting some good things. Maybe we'll get Christopher Daniels in a match, or at least slapping. What do you say? He was going to slap Jay Lethal. So I could see that being a segment next week on Rampage with maybe Jay Lethal, Satnam Singh, and Sanjay Dutt in the ring talking trash about Joe, and then Christopher Daniels comes out. And maybe Joe will come out after that to make the save on Christopher Daniels. Or maybe we could even get a tag match on. So they made it sound like there's going to be a pretty big announcements for later this week on Rampage. Then in 8 days, or I'm recording this on Saturday, so a week from now at ROH Death Before Dishonor, we've got all our title matches set, and it'll be in the most anticipated rematch probably ever, FTR versus the Briscoes for the ROH tag titles, Wheeler Yuta versus Daniel Garcia for the ROH Pure title in a Pure Rules match. That was a match we were supposed to get. They even recorded a Garcia versus Yuta Pure Rules title match in one of the dark tapings. They decided not to air that show, that match. And I'm thinking maybe it had nothing to do with the match being bad. They just wanted to run this back and say it was the first time at the ROH show. So I thought that was pretty dang interesting, because I remember seeing that they even set up a Yuta Daniel Garcia match after Yuta defended on Dark the Pure title against Tony Nese. They set up a Daniel Garcia seemingly going to be And then I know I had also seen that they recorded that match for Dark, but like I said, they decided not to air it, and they'll just have a match on the pay-per-view instead, a different match. So for the ROH Women's title, Mercedes Martinez defends against Serena Deeb. For the ROH TV title, Samoa Joe will fight the champion Jay Lethal. And then world champion Jonathan Gresham will defend against Claudio Castagnoli. So what a card we got set for next Saturday. That's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All 5 title matches are set. We don't know what else will be on the card. Maybe it's going to be a shorter pay-per-view. Maybe that means the prices. I haven't looked at the price yet, but maybe if it's only those 5 matches and a 2-hour card or something, it'll be a little cheaper, which would be nice because now we're at 3 months in a row of having to throw down our hard-earned money in this economy for admittedly amazing pay-per-views, but I thought AEW was going to have this agreement with us fans that we only have to pay that money every 4 months. So here we are 3 months in a row. But like I said, I've been super impressed with the first 2, of course. It was Revolution and Forbidden Door. I loved Forbidden Door. So now this looks like another great one. Yeah, it's a 3rd pay-per-view in a row for a month, but I think it could be worth the money. So at least we get August off before the beginning of September. We'll have All Out. Then we'll probably go back to the unless ROH is going to start running for a year as well. So we'll have to wait and see. We have no idea what the heck's going to go happen with ROH. We don't know if they're going to take over Rampage or get their own show or what. So it's main event time. It'll be Private Parties, Isiah, Kassidy, and Marq Quen returning after a little bit of a sabbatical against the Lucha Brothers, Penta Oscuro, and his brother Rey Fenix. And we saw Private Party return on Tuesday on Dark, where they beat Bear Country. And they weren't even not only in AEW, they weren't wrestling anywhere. So maybe there was a recovering injury, or maybe just getting in their head space together or something. But hopefully this is the start of a restart of their career of Private Party. And they don't have to necessarily win tonight to accomplish that, because I never once thought the Lucha Brothers were going to lose to Private Party tonight. But just a competitive, good match, and they should be able to get on TV more. And we did see, if you didn't see BTE being the Elite this week, Matt Hardy did take credit for screwing up Private Party. So Matt Hardy's been very repentant of all his actions and says everything that's happened is because of karma. So last time these guys were in the same ring was on Rampage in May. Death Triangle defeated AFO's Butcher, Blade, and Marq Quen. The last time they had a tag match against each other was all the way back on episode 4 of Dynamite. It was in the World Tag Team Title Tournament in the semifinals, where the Lucha Brothers beat Private Party. So that was back in October of 2019. So we've got 2 AEW original tag teams here. Private Party are out first to Andrade's Music. Again, they're kind of like, I don't want to say the S word, but they don't have property over their own contract. So Private Party are somehow ranked number 5 in the tag division. Now, I said earlier when we saw Silver and Reynolds were number 4 in the tag division. I'll talk about that later. So Private Party somehow number 5 in the tag division. They've had one match in the last 6 weeks or so, a win against Bear Country, who have like a 4 in 14 record or something like that. So this is probably a byproduct of all the dang injuries right now. There's so many injuries, including in the tag division, that one win on Dark was able to put Private Party in the top 5. So yeah, this confirms for sure that the Kings of the Black Throne will be ranked next week in the tag division, and we might be building to a Swerve in Our Glory Kings of the Black Throne match at some point. So the Lucha Brothers out now. We see a recap of Penta getting his mask taken off. It was either 2 or 3 times now. And Penta is gonna start this match out with Isiah Kassidy. Isiah puts his hand in his pants and pulls out the Cero Miedo hand sign, puts it right in Penta's face. That was kind of funny. Isiah then charges into Penta, right into the Private Party corner. Andrade is already reaching for Pentagon's mask from the outside. So Quen tags in, and gone is Marq Quen's wild hair and dyed beard. He's just got a regular haircut, no dyed beard. That was a really cool look on Marq Quen, but I guess it goes along the lines of what we were saying, that Private Party are trying to not reinvent themselves per se, but just restart their career. So I guess that's a good decision if you're trying to show you're different than you were. Lucha Brothers then try a double team move, but end up drop kicking each other in the feet. That was a pretty cool move. They both sell that they hurt their each other's leg on that one. Private Party then hits drop kicks on sending the men outside. Then they both dive onto the outside onto the Lucha Brothers. The Jericho seems to really love Private Party, and Excalibur mentions Roosh isn't ringside, so you know that means we'll see Roosh later, and we do. So thanks for that, Excalibur. Fenix then hits a rolling cutter right back into the ring. Now that looked great. Tag over to Pentagon. Quen tries to fight out of this double team, but can't. Penta hits, a little bit after this, Penta gets hit with the silly string. This one looked a lot better than the contrived version against Bear Country. Private Party pose as we go to a picture-in-picture ad break. So Andrade is now taking cheap shots on Penta behind the ref's back. Private Party hit a double team stomp on Penta's the back of his neck, and they do throw Penta out of the ring, where Andrade's now slamming Penta into the barricade. They must have had the ref distracted. Isiah now throws Penta into another barricade, and Penta's isolated and in trouble as Private Party now work quick tags and hit double teams. When we come back from the break, Penta's still in trouble. The crowd's rallying loudly behind Penta, who then hits a sling blade to tag in his brother Ray. Fenix comes in with an arm drag stomp combo, and then a leg drop reverse power bomb kind of flapjack type thing on the both men at the same time. Great stuff by Fenix. I'm glad his arm didn't break into a million pieces and he was out for all year. Glad to see him back. So the crowd's now chanting Lucha Brothers as Fenix hits some really loud sounding chops. Both men are now up on the top rope, but Quen comes in from behind and they hit a doomsday crossbody on Rey Fenix. Pretty good looking move there. Quen now tags in and they hit another double team. Fenix looks really hurt off of that one. They tried to take the mask off of Fenix, but they can't. Fenix then hits a jawbreaker after we clearly saw Marq Quen whisper into his ear to hit him with something. So a little contrived on that one. Penta, then the match really breaks down. So if you thought it was already contrived, it gets even much, much worse. And I'm the kind of guy, I don't care who wins and loses matches. I just hate when you remind me that what I'm watching is fake. So sometimes you can't help it. So this one was definitely like the whole Marq Quen thing, clearly telling Rey Fenix to reverse the next move or whatever was one thing. But then Pentagon gets the hot tag, and instead of getting his hot tag offense in, Penta goes up to the top rope and slips and falls, falling right on his face in front of both Private Party. He was supposed to be hitting like a crossbody onto both Private Party, but no. Unfortunately, Pentagon slips, falls onto his face. But here's the problem. They just go right into the ending they were going to have anyway. So even though Private Party were both there and the guy just fell on his face, they both get destroyed anyway. Penta hits a Death Valley driver on one into the other, then hits Made in Japan on one of the other guys. I couldn't tell who was who at this point because I was so like ridiculous about that botch. But Jose, the assistant, now distracts the referee. The referee ridiculously gets distracted for the longest time. Again, this match, the ending of this match is terrible, and it's not even at the worst part yet. So Andrade now up on the apron. He gets super kicked by Penta. Now Roosh runs in. Thanks again for spoiling that Roosh was going to run in, Excalibur. And Roosh hits a big, nasty looking forearm to the back of the neck of Pentagon. Pentagon just gets right back up like it never happened, hits a Canadian Destroyer on Quen. That no sell was crap. What the heck? Anyway, Fenix now gets the hot tag and hits the Black Fire driver for the 1-2-3. That no sell was ridiculous. I hated that ending all the way from when we saw Marq Quen telling Rey Fenix to reverse the next move into the. I get botches happen in wrestling. It's not the end of the world, but they should have done something different. They should have had Private Party attack Pentagon for falling on his face. I do this sometimes when I'm doing the universe mode stream, and I'll try and let the guy like come back every now and then so that my streams aren't just me killing them. And if I will give them a chance to hit me, but if they fail, if they jump off the top rope and miss me or something, I immediately just kick the crap out of them because there's no way I'm going to let you fail and then still come back and hit me. And the same thing goes here. There's no reason Private Party shouldn't have kicked as soon as as soon as Penta fell on his face from the top rope. He was trying to hit a double crossbody on both members of Private Party, but as soon as that happened, Private Party should have done at least one attack, and then you could have like Penta reverse it or something. So you need to think on your feet quick. Otherwise, you're just, if you're gonna do, if something unplanned happens and then you just go with what the plan was originally, that's crap. You need to learn how to adjust. So what the Private Party should have done is kicked Penta right in his head that he had just fallen on from the top rope. But no, he just does all the hot tag offense he was going to do anyway. And then Rush runs in when the ref shouldn't have been distracted that long, second of all. And then third of all, Rush hits a nasty looking forearm from behind. Never saw it coming. Pentagon just no sells it, hits a Canadian Destroyer, and gets the hot tag to Fenix to end the match. What the heck is that? Capital F fake. The number one thing I don't want to watch in wrestling is when you remind me that it's fake. That just makes me want to go watch some UFC and stuff. When you tell me it's that big and fake. So normally I'm behind the Lucha Brothers. They have I know a lot of the Lucha style gets buried by looking too fake and contrived and more like a dance than a fight. And I understand that, but I do agree that the Lucha Brothers are so good at the Lucha Libre style that they could make it look real. But this was terrible. All the way from when Quen, clearly we could see him whisper into Fenix's ear to reverse the next move. Immediately after that, the botch happened where they didn't adjust their plan. They just acted like the botch never happened, but we all saw it with our own eyes. And then they have some guy distract the ref way too long than it would ever possibly distract the ref. And then a fourth bad thing happens that reminds you what you're watching is fake. When Rush comes down, clobbers a guy from behind, the guy just acts like it never happened. He's not even at the beginning of the match where he would have all his strength. He was probably, Penta was at like 20%, 25% strength at that point because he had been through a grueling match. So he gets knocked out from behind with a shot to the back of the head, and we're supposed to act like what? Rush's strikes have no effect now? What are you trying to tell us? So that ending was terrible. The overall show was pretty good. I enjoyed. I figured I was going to enjoy this match more than the first tag match, but I ended up being opposite. I hated this match, but I loved the Dark Order versus Kings of the Black Throne match. Of course, the other tag match was just a joke, complete joke with the Athena and Kris Statlander destroying the Renegade twins in minutes. The bigger joke was the whole sneak attack from behind lasted 2 minutes, and then the double team that they were going to do on the sneak attacker, 2 seconds. Then the double team attack that they were going to do on the sneak attacker lasted 2 seconds, and then the save that that was made from Jade and Kiera lasted 3 seconds. So what the heck? 10 seconds to do 3 different things in a storyline and then get them out of there after a 20-second match. Just get rid of the women's division if you're not going to treat them with respect. So 2 out of the 4 matches tonight, not very good. I did enjoy the first match, like I said, and I did enjoy the ROH World Title match. Really good ROH World Title match. So this is definitely a split show, in my opinion. It would have to get a 5, maybe a 6, because I also like the rap from Max Caster. That was pretty good as well. And we set up the whole Lee Moriarty maybe going to Stokely Hathaway. So because of those 2 things combined with half of the matches were good, half of them weren't, I'll give this a 6 out of 10. But definitely, I don't know who to blame. Maybe Private Party should have just changed things on their own. Maybe they're too young to realize that they should have kicked Penta in the face. This is a tape show, so if you go longer than you were supposed to, we can always cut something down that happened earlier. So really bad stuff there. I'm going to get going, but I will be back Monday. We'll talk about what happens on Elevation. I have heard a rumor that something big happens on Elevation. I try my best to not find spoilers, so I don't know what it is yet, but I have heard something big happens on Elevation. And then we'll find out if maybe we can get 2 weeks in a row, a special match added to Dark. If you didn't see Dark this week, it was the best episode of Dark ever. They added 2 matches that happened over the weekend away from AEW. So one was from Tokyo Joshi Pro featuring Thunder Rosa versus Yumi not Takeshita, but Yamashita. And the other one was the first ever All Atlantic title defense by Pac. It was over in Rev Pro in the UK against Shota Umino, who we saw get a fireball to the face from Jericho. So we'll see if Dark can add on some extra matches like that. I would love Dark to be like that going forward every single week. But yeah, I'm going to be staying up. We're only 1 hour away from the G1 Climax 32 2022 edition in New Japan. The tournament of all tournaments, the month-long tournament, starts in 1 hour. So I will be back somewhere around 5 hours from now. I think it's going to be a 3 hour at least show, maybe 3.5 hours. So whenever G1 ends, I will be back here to let you know what happens. So I will talk to you then. In the meantime, have a great night and enjoy your weekend. And I'll talk to you again soon. Peace.